Welcome to AMP, the platform for multi-sport age group athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to episode 5. Before we get started, some sad news. GB multisport athlete and teammate Maurice Young passed away at the age of 86. Anyone who met Maurice saw him as an inspiration as to what is possible, and a true legend in the age group multisport circle. I first met Maurice at my first Duathlon in 2017 Soria, Spain. The race was about to start and we were chatting away, and he was quite a calming influence. We met up again in Romania when my kids and wife came to support, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing as Maurice raced. They saw what was possible and what it meant to never give up. Maurice went on to win 7 goals over 12 internationals, starting in 2013 and finishing in 2019. He inspired us all. He was a legend, and most of all, he was a very nice man. Rest in peace, Maurice. On this episode, we chat to Matt Baldock, an obsessive hammer. That's someone who supports West Ham for those who don't follow football. Matt grew up doing the usual activities, but after being told by his PE teacher, age 11, not the PE teacher, that's Matt, that he would never amount to much in a sporting terms, he set out to prove him wrong. Although he didn't know it at the time, with a good background in swimming and running, and a taste for multisport, after taking part in the London Heathrow Games in the aquathon, Matt had sown the seeds of becoming an athlete who liked to do more than one sport. And after finding out about age group competition, in 2014 he set himself a 5-year plan to try and qualify to represent GB. But not taking the traditional route of starting off with a sprint distance, Matt decided to go straight in with an Ironman. He worked his way down and he finally qualified for GB in his age group to race in a standard distance duathlon. His first race qualified him for the ETU in Târgu Mureș, Romania in 2019, where he finished 4th in his age group. And he followed that up this year by racing at Punta Umbria, Spain. An interesting route to take and a fascinating conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So welcome along, Matt. Great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, really good, thanks. Really good. COVID times, locking down, driving me a bit mad, to be honest.
How's it?
I'm sure it's the same for everyone.
Yeah, how's it affecting?
It started off being quite a novelty. And slowly but surely, every day is the same. It's a bit like Groundhog Day. Yeah. And by now, I'm done with it. Done with it, kind of stuck at home.
Do you work from home?
Yes, yeah. So I tend to work from home as a home office kind of situation, but I'm always out and about, visiting people, factories, whatever.
What is it you do?
I'm in the packaging industry.
Oh,
so
okay. For food?
Yeah, food packaging, so flexibles, working a lot with the retailers to try and reduce plastic waste, etc. Right. So a good, honest living.
Good, steady income, eh?
It's always going to be there. Absolutely. So,
yeah, cool.
So that's been good. But it's been a complete change, obviously, and we're now stuck at home, teleconferencing all the time.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough, and that is going to become kind of the new normal, as they say.
Yeah.
A lot more, which is great on the one hand, because you're going to reduce carbon, like do less travelling, etc.
Yeah.
But you're going to lose the personal touch, and that's hard.
Are you in sales or are you manufacturing?
It's a bit of both.
Right.
I'm part of kind of a commercially R&D type team.
Right.
So it's a bit of everything, really.
Yeah, so that is hard, isn't it, when you're used to, dealing with people face to face and part of your job, and then that all suddenly stops and we've got to do this sort of thing. It's hard. Anyway, we just got to put up with it, haven't we, and just get on with it and take what comes at the moment, because who knows what's going to happen.
Exactly. No one knows anything.
Nobody knows. We can start off then. Just tell me a little bit about your background growing up, sporting-wise. What were your interests, hobbies, how you got into those to begin with, and then further down the line, how you actually got into multisport.
I grew up in a place called Chadwell Heath, which is kind of on the outskirts of Romford, Essex, which is an interesting place growing up. Most importantly is where West Ham had their kind of primary training ground, so being a big West Ham fan, amazing to be there.
Cool.
And so it was always kind of over at the training ground watching what was going on. And obviously the love of sport came a bit from that, because clearly you're seeing people who were heroes, at the time. And then with a bit of a sporting background in the family, and my old man was a fantastic swimmer and was on the cusp of really making it, and then bizarrely turned to snooker, where he also became really good. Most incredible journey. And then beyond that, grandparents who were in the boxing game and then in the hockey game. So sports have always been circled, which is really good. I think, particularly my generation, we sadly were the first guinea pigs for when a directive was introduced by government where sport actually became non-competitive. So sports days, instead of having the individual races, and I experienced both. So I was on the cusp, so we had the individual stuff. Then suddenly, oh no, everything's a relay. Everyone's a winner.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot to a lot happened within that scheme that actually brings out the whole snowflake argument and how millennials are now kind of considered a bit wet and a bit weak. Right. Me being one of them. Right. I think a lot derives from that. You take away the competition. I think we're also brought up with, follow your dreams. Which is great, but I think follow what you're good at is probably a better.
Yeah, that's better advice, isn't
it? Yeah, and I think we're in the situation where we are now. Interestingly, with society being a bit different, a bit odd. Everyone's opinion counts. Social media clearly has had a part to play in that too. So we're part of that really. Growing up, and then schooling wise, it was amazing to be surrounded by some great sports people. I think my little synopsis, including like Tara Bird, who's gone on to great things, Chris Reynolds being part of that, and then having pictures of Sam Smith on the walls. Sam Smith, the tennis player, not the singer.
That did confuse me a bit.
Didn't come across the singer. But it's amazing to be around all of that, and then we were fortunate enough to have people like John Lever was our cricket master. So amazing to have these well-known sports people all around. And then we came across the first bit of controversy. I think aged 11, being told as a whole year group, none of you are going to make it in the sporting world, and that was wow. That was the first real. This is such a clear memory. The first time I felt gutted, but also inspired at the same time, because look, being defined by being a West Ham fan and growing up where I grew up, authority didn't really have its place in life. It was always you against the machine, fighting against people that were there to put you down. So that really lit a fire. And that fight, it was almost like they were trying to. I don't know. I still don't know to this very day the reason for doing that. That's such a vivid memory, which did spur me personally on to try and stick the proverbial bird up at the guy and try and do all I could to prove him wrong. Maybe that was it. Maybe reverse psychology. Maybe for a generation that was brought up with the softly approach. That starkness, maybe a shock to the system, and inspired all of us really in that year group. We all looked at each other to try and do something, and to varying degrees of success. I think we all did. we had a couple of guys who went on to play professional rugby, which was great. You know, it was great to see that development. And I think a lot of county athletes and things like that also came from our group. So perhaps that was the way.
Yeah.
You know, to try and shatter one's dreams so young.
That does sound old school, actually.
It's really old. It was such a traditional place, which was it kind of worked, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So just going back to your dad and the swimming. Did he instill that into you at a young age? Then swimming, was that part of your life, your upbringing?
No, I had issues. So as a kid, I'd have grommets and stuff put in my ears because the hearing wasn't perfect. So I couldn't swim.
Right.
And old school schooling. So I went to the same school for the young prep school days as well. And when I was it was 7. The intake was about 7 years old. And I really wanted to play football. And they said, "Well, you can't go to a football club until you've learned how to swim."
Bizarre.
I was like, "What?" And it really bizarre, honestly. And so I had to do swimming lessons instead of football. So I hated swimming, purely based on that. But obviously the reasons were medical, why I couldn't get in the pool beforehand. You mentioned the old man. He was, he didn't really push it. I think he was scared of pushing it. I think a lot of people would be frightened of pushing their passion onto the kid just in case he puts them off. So he left me to my own devices until I could learn, and then clearly he was like, "Right,
that's
come
good.
on, lad, 5 a.m. swimming pool."
That's good parenting, though, isn't it? Letting you sort of like come to it yourself.
It's really good because I mean I've just become a dad. I've got a little 10-month-old, and I find it really hard not to push. Cheers, yeah, it's great. I'm still here. I'm only a little bit greyer.
All right, it comes on thick and fast. Don't worry about that.
Apparently, Rich, you're 25 years old, so so it's really hard not to push that onto a kid. Even now, I'm looking at him thinking, let's get out of football and have a kick around. Let's only do that, and it's difficult. You have to just let them crack on and find their way. So but no, Dad did help a lot with the swimming actually for moving forward in the sporting life for sure. And great coach actually, really good.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's it. It's such a good thing to have, isn't it? A parent that's going to help you. You know. So, what age was that? How old were you when you started swimming?
From about 10, I think. Right. So obviously, I had to learn age 7.
Yeah.
And then I managed to get in a pool and did all right. And then it was also interesting. He allowed me to kind of find my own way with the swim. So obviously, anything I do, I like to do well. So obviously you get into school teams and you get into all the champs at a little age, all the galas, and he still didn't try and interfere. He left kind of the school coaches to crack on and do what they wanted to do. And then it's about 10 years old. He's like, okay, you're starting to do okay in racing and stuff. Let's see. Let's just have some fun. Let's go in the pool. Let's do some drills. Let's see what you're made of. So that was pretty cool. That obviously, I think, formed the basis of what we do today and what I've done since then.
Yeah, a good base. So
absolutely a fantastic base. And you know what? And I look back and I see a lot of friends and people that are in sport and not in sport. But particularly for those in sport, it's just so good to have someone within that close network who actually understands sport and what it means and the power it actually has over you as an individual, as a collective.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't have that, and a lot of really talented people just drop off.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got that support network and people that get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important.
And even better being your dad.
Yeah, exactly. Free.
Free. Yeah. Always good. So other than the swimming then, how long did that carry on for? And then what was like interceded with that swimming?
So it was amazing. So I think about age 10, I found myself in a bit of a sporting kind of growth spurt. So swimming happened, and then during like PE lessons and stuff, the guys were like, hang on, you can run a bit as well. So they just threw me into the cross country team as it was. I didn't know what the hell I was getting myself into. Bizarrely started winning races, so that was cool. So that was a nice offshot. I think that happened because of the swimming. Swimming builds endurance tremendously. And kind of so Dad had nothing to do with the running. He then took me to Newham and Essex Beagles running club, and then I ended up joining Woodford Green, just to keep the legs ticking over, which was amazing. So he trusted. He introduced me to people he trusted. Yeah. I think, which is another really good thing. He didn't just thrust me into the local club and leave me there. He did his research. I think he had a bit of history with Newham and Essex Beagles as well. Yeah. For some reason. So it was great to have that network in place already, and then kind of it lasted till probably late teens, so 15, 16. I think he kind of took a step back from everything. Because at that point, I was a young, moody teenager wanting to go out on the town, and he couldn't in his right mind support that wholeheartedly. So it's kind of dropped off a bit, but by then I was kind of established and doing what I was doing in various club situations as well. So no, but it was a good 5 or 6 years, but picking up all that old school knowledge and how they used to do things, and he knew that it wasn't how they did things today. Of course, so things like weights. Goodness me, back in his day, they were doing weights in their early teens and stuff. I was flabbergasted to hear that. Yeah, causing a lot of injuries to people. Yeah. I mean, goodness me. So it was a great experience. I think without that, God knows what I would have done. Yeah. So it's good to have that. Hand on your back.
Great. So what was your first multi-sport experience then?
I think it was 14.
Okay.
Pretty sure I was 14, and it was the amazing London Heathrow Youth Games. And anyone listening who has had any kind of dealings with it, what an amazing event. Thousands and thousands and thousands of kids from kind of around London and just outside in the burbs got involved in what was the biggest multi-sport festival in Europe for young people, particularly. It doesn't exist anymore, which is really sad. So you kind of had to qualify for your London Borough team, as I did, so the London Borough of Redbridge, respect, and it was through a bit of swimming and running. So people knew I did both. That I kind of qualified for the. They called it duathlon at the time, but it was aquathlon really. It was a swim and then run. Yeah. So that was amazing. So that unlocked, because the London Heathrow Youth Games were taken really seriously indeed. So we got a full set of coaches looking after the swim and the run, and got involved in that squad, and really kind of took training to another level because the guys wanted to win. Yeah. But also you started meeting other people dotted around who also had the same kind of drive, aspiration, and particularly first access to females with that drive, really, as well, because they mixed everything up. The girls were always better swimmers than the boys at that point. I think they seemed to develop far sooner and used to make us quite embarrassed in the pool. But it was a wonderful thing. So all the events, London Heathrow Youth Games around the athletics and the multi-sport, aquathlon, etc., all held at Crystal Palace National Sports Centre at the time. Amazing. So you go there with a knowledge of kind of maybe the history of sport, the standing Crystal Palace had within particularly the athletics world, and you were inspired. And I think a lot of people in our squad in particular, the coaches were desperate for us to become almost historians of the sport as well, understand what's happened before, and try and get more perspective, because it's not just competing, although that was the primary focus. It's learning, and it's trying to understand the magnitude of where you are, what you're taking part in, and that wasn't lost on us. So you turn up inspired, and then you just look at the facilities, and for us kids, we'd never seen anything. There were tracks, there was paths, there were cycling trails, there's the pool, and that kind of complex. And for the first time, it was my first ever massage as well. I had a massage because someone was offering them free before a race. I was like, I think these are meant to work. A pre-race massage as well. I remember first time. And it was it's the whole experience, and you were made to feel so special by the organisers. Much like today, when we go to our events all over, you're made to feel so special, and it's kind of a testament to the work you've put in. Yeah. And part of that experience is so valuable, because it's finally people recognising what you've done. And all of us who compete, the work you put in is incredible, honestly. the training we have to put in.
Yeah, and I think, unless you're actually involved, people, it's like, I suppose, professional sports people as well. People only see the outcome, don't they? They don't actually see what you go through. And as amateur age groupers, you can appreciate actually what the professionals do also. But people don't see that. They only see the outcome. They don't see what goes into it. So you're dead right.
Absolutely. Because they don't see the cold winter morning runs.
Yeah.
But all that experience and stuff was quite magical. And it inspires you to do more.
Yeah, so what was next then after you competed in that? What did you move on to?
So after that, it was kind of, okay, did that for a few years.
Was that held every year then?
Annually. It was an annual event, and it was, oh man, it was fantastic. You could do a whole podcast on it. It's it was mad. It was mad. You wouldn't even think about that happening today. It was. I think it was. I might be right in saying it's bigger than the Youth Olympics in terms of the amount of sports and the amount of kids involved. So it was, really, really powerful. So that kind of happened, and then at the same time, I was doing a lot of the mini marathon stuff, which was good fun. Again, qualified for the borough team and had a crack at that. So that was all right. Never did any good, but it was again another experience where you get to have a little insight into the elites, really, because you're running the last 3 miles of the course. People are out cheering. I think the wheelchair races are kind of similar time. Some of them were coming through, so you've got to weave in and out of that. It was definitely again another magical experience, and it was kind of those two. And then obviously you get the school I was at whipped into studying hard to get into university. You must go. This is your priority number one in life. So a lot of the sport kind of dropped off a little bit there. But there were fits and starts again. A bit of swimming mainly going on, kind of club level. Just me settling into mediocrity really. Yeah. I did find a drop off in motivation. Between the ages of 16 and 18. Right. But then, you're starting to go out, you're starting to meet girls, all of that stuff kind of takes over. Yeah. And you become very self-aware, and I think that was quite a defining period too. A couple of northern voyages. So, but then you go to university, and then things ramp up again because actually the stuff that was not cool in school becomes very cool at university, and to be top of the class is something to stick thumbs up for, and sport, etc. So what sport did you partake in at university? It was really interesting. So I did a lot of running there. I kind of started to explore cycling for the first time. So cycling is always a sport that I had no background in ever. I used to see. Luckily I kind of crossed over with Non Stanford, who was at University of Birmingham with us all. And aside for seeing someone often prance around in white lycra quite a lot of the time, I always saw these very strange looking kind of contraptions which didn't quite make sense to me as being bicycles. Obviously the time trial bikes and things that I was seeing, and I was like, oh God, okay, that looks pretty interesting. So I kind of investigated a bit more. I had a friend who was in cycling. Amazing the people you meet on your courses and stuff. So he cycled from Northern Ireland. So that was cool. So he let me kind of borrow a bike or two to see what happened. Took me out and tried to explain the sport, and got me interested in things like the Tour de France and trying to work out what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And in my naivety, I remember one night we were just watching some of the highlights, and I don't know, the peloton was average up to 25, 28 miles an hour or something. And I was like, no, I can do that flippantly. And he was like, mate, no. But I took the challenge, completely failed. So he put me on a turbo trainer for the first time. I was like, go on then, fill your boots, do 5 minutes at 28 miles an hour. I think I barely touched 20, to be honest. It was amazing. But then, the cogs start whirring in your brain, and you're like, okay, can I actually do something in this? I was doing all right. And to be fair, my friend Niall, he was quite impressed with what power I could put out at that point, being a little skinny thing. So that's where that started. That started the thought process that just bubbled away in the back of the head. I clearly stuck with the swimming, stuck with a bit of running, and I ended up training a lot with a guy called Jared Dunn who went to the Rio Olympics. Although we just knew each other from the sporting world. He'd seen kind of what I'd been doing running wise as a kid, so he thought might be worth training with him. So I used to do some of the longer distance stuff with him. He was a 400-metre runner, so I couldn't touch him on anything short distance. But we started training together again. And what I've always found is I keep getting associated and surrounding myself with these people who are incredible athletes, hoping that some of that's reflected onto me, which I don't think it ever was. But it was amazing but the inspiration you get from the people around you and your mates, because it makes it more real.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, it also brings you on. You should always train with somebody better. If you want to get, that's the way I look at it. If you want to get faster, you want to get fitter, train with somebody better. So you've got some aspirations,
That's it. But the fear is making them worse.
Yeah.
But it was amazing, and I'd always, that was interesting, because I've always quite interested in why people choose person X to train with or whatever. And it took me to a book. I was reading Steve Ovett's book, so obviously looking back at the history of athletics, like you look back at the history of the Duncan Goodshoes of the world, who are absolute legends. So in kind of the running side of the sports, I was looking at Steve Ovett. I always found him quite interesting. And I kind of looking back at the videos and how he was, I liked him more so than Lord Coe. I just thought he had a bit more spunk about him, really. But he used to train with someone. I think in his book, in his autobiography, in the latter stages, he says he's really grateful for the guy he ran with, because the guy he ran with was really good, and he knows he ruined him.
Yeah.
And that guy could not fulfill his potential because he was training with Steve Ovett. Yeah, and it was really kind of him to say that. And I don't see many athletes actually talk about that.
No.
So I thought that's a mark of a man.
Yeah.
But obviously that's always in the back of my head when I was like, Jared wants to train with me. Yes. I think, crap, actually, this could ruin me forever. So there's always these thoughts going on, and it kind of, but I ran with it, and it seems to have worked out well for both of us in the end.
And from a sporting point of view, what did you get on with? Did you actually do any triathlons after university, or did you do any during university?
Yeah, did a few just to see, what it was all about, get a bit wet, get a bit sweaty, mainly within the university. So the US is really good for hosting their own events and kind of introducing, much like British Triathlon do with the Go Active scheme, getting people into the sport. So on a very local insular level, did a bit of that. Did reasonably well, but then I didn't know where to pitch myself anyway, so I just did all right. Didn't really think much of it. At the end of university, where you've acquired skills that you wouldn't use in real life, in the real world, I thought, well, let's apply these skills now with some of the analytical stuff, and just look back at what I was doing. There's a lot of data being created over time from swimming, from kind of the running, from the other thing, CrossFit and things. You pick up lots of bits of data. So I actually did an analysis and just to see where I sat, and did a bit of work comparing it down at Birmingham University, and we kind of were looking through, and at that point they were like, actually, there's probably a bit of potential here to do something, you're not going to be a professional. No. No, forget that. But there's this thing called age grouping. We think you could probably make it based on your potential and what you've done so far. So think about it. So I did, and decided on a 5-year plan. It sounds so sad, but I thought with a long-term goal, at least there's always something to keep my mind active, because the work is work. Yeah. It's not a hobby, is it? It's work, and you need that release. I think all people need a release from the daily grind and the stresses of life. So I kind of embarked on a 5-year plan where I knew I wanted to start with an Ironman.
Right.
Both because it sounds really good, but actually it was more to do with the training and the process of getting to that point, knowing that actually, yes, you've got the discipline, you can manage your time properly to reach those levels. So what I found really interesting was the more I trained, the better my time management was for work, because you had to. When you're training 16, 17 hours a week, most of it was junk miles. I didn't know how to train.
Yeah.
So it was the hours sounded good, but the output was pants. But you become better at life. And I really welcome that. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's great. This 5-year plan is actually going to work, because it's going to help me at work and physically. And then the idea was to start with Ironman and then trickle down towards some of the more suitable age group events. So I initially thought sprint triathlon, let's do that as the end goal, which there's so many amazing people. I didn't get a shot at that. So I was like, okay, what can I do then? What else am I half decent at? And looking at kind of the work I did with Jared on the run side of things, actually, duathlon's probably going to suit. It's a couple of runs. It's hard. Yeah. I find it much harder than triathlon.
Yeah, I had this conversation with another interviewee last time out, and I said, I often say to triathletes, pure triathletes, that duathlon's a lot harder. And unless you've experienced it, you think, oh no, it can't be. But it is.
Yeah, it is. Definitely. It's so much harder on the body. I think the second run is, goodness me, it's one of the hardest things you could ever do. So I kind of stumbled upon that as an option and was like, right, let's look at that. So started with Ironman, then trickled down the distance. I think I did Ironman year 1, year 2 did an Ironman, year 3 half Ironman. And actually the beauty of Ironman is being able to travel around the world in Europe to do stuff. So, I really appreciate the organisation for giving everyone the opportunity to see more of the world, places you wouldn't otherwise look at. Another great benefit of long distance, for sure. And then after the half Iron, it was then looking at qualification. So to prepare for duathlon qualification, I entered randomly the London Triathlon, which was I think about a month before duathlon qualifiers up at Alton Park. And then that caused me a lot of confusion because I came 35th overall in the London Triathlon. I was like, what? Yeah. This is impossible. How did this happen? But actually, the beauty of it was gave me the confidence then, because I was really scared about the qualifiers, and I think a lot of people have this anxiety of not qualifying because that's your goal and has been your target for a while. But knowing as well, if you fail to qualify or fail to meet your own expectations, the impact mentally that would have on you, and would you even bother to turn up next time? There's a lot of fear that's created. And I guess I'm not alone. Fear is kind of a really positive driver because it makes you do stuff, You kind of work in sport. So coming out of the really confidence building London Triathlon, rocked up to the Alton Park qualifiers for
the London Triathlon. So just let's recap a little bit because that all got a bit condensed. Done your Ironman, couple of Ironmans, you'd done your half Ironman, and then after that, did you go into standard distance?
I did, yeah. I did a couple of standard distances, which I found harder than half Iron and full Iron.
And they were triathlons?
Always sticking with the tries to that point.
Yeah. But you weren't looking at this time to qualify for age group through that?
The original ambition was sprint triathlon qualifications, but I did the national champs and got completely schooled and was like, nah, I'm never going to do it. A bit of realism. Okay. First time I'd actually done that to myself as well. Yeah. But you're actually not going to do this.
So after that, then did you start looking at duathlon?
Yeah, exactly.
What distance was that at then?
Standard duathlon was then the next thing after London Tri.
What process did you go through to find that out? I always ask this question because I'm intrigued by how people, what process they use to, one, decide which event. Obviously, you had your process, which, by the way, not very many people start off at Ironman. It's always the other way around. So hats off to you for going in at that. When I read that on your email, I thought that's an interesting concept.
The process is Ironman is the toughest. There are other, obviously other crazy events as well, but in kind of a general sense, that's the toughest triathlon event. And I thought if you start there, you'd have to build that resilience, that toughness, that discipline. And once you have that and proven it, then actually dropping down the distances becomes that much easier. I think that's the way I work. As long as you can prove you can do something, you can achieve quite a lot. So it was a case of trying to prove to myself that I could maintain that level of training, the hours, to see that, okay, there is a future. Had I not been able to finish or something, then maybe I would have just quit. That on paper is tougher than your end goal. Yeah. Actually, because you wouldn't have achieved that goal, and I hate not the non-fulfillment of potential. But if you had no potential to start with, which would have been proven by not completing that Ironman when you've set out to do that, then would have probably given up. So the process was clearly to say, can you do that? Yeah. Something really hard, something that has no relevance to your end goal, but will set the foundations of training. And luckily, the answer was yes there. And so you could then more comfortably work down the distances and try and prove yourselves in these other arenas. but it's having that base, you know. It's just like normal training. You're building that base. The base training in winter is horrific. Yeah. And it's so much longer and tougher and whatever than what you do in this kind of in the summer months within season. So I kind of use it as that, but rather than over the period of a year, over 5 years, and kind of using that basis, and it kind of worked for me. Yeah,
it sounds interesting. So just going back to the, you got to that standard distance point where you wanted to be. Was it just that you thought, well, I'm never going to do well at triathlon at that distance, so I'll have a look at duathlon, or was that what it was? And then how did you go about finding out about what races you were going to go for? If it's me, I'll have a look at who else is racing in certain races to see what chance I've got. What was your process of doing that?
Obviously, I worked out triathlon wasn't going to happen. There's some amazing people. I knew duathlon would have been the next step because I always on the last run leg, I've never been overtaken by more than maybe 2 or 3 people. So I was like, okay. So when you're a bit tired, I seem to be able to keep turning over. Yeah. That harks back to doing shed loads of Ironman training and building that up. So that again, it's that base that's carried you through. So it's like, okay, duathlon, it's worth a shout because of the amount of running in there. People are gonna get seriously tired on that bike because you look at the speeds people lay down during the bike race. Some of those off the scale. Again, speeds that I could only dream of. So it was like duathlon. Okay, so I've definitely got the endurance for it. The bike a bit hit and miss, but I know on the last leg I can do well. And it's picking that one discipline where you think, yes, I'm going to do well, and it's always run 2 for me. And the swim in the triathlon, but that was that's literally out of the water. And then the process of choosing events. I like your approach of looking at the competition. I did that for one race, right? And when we qualify for Almere in the sprint, next year, we kept our places. Woohoo!
Yes, I believe. Yeah.
Great news.
Get in.
So I did that for that, and I went to qualify at Stockton.
Yeah, I was there.
Were you there?
I was.
Well, what a lovely race!
Oh, it's fabulous. That's my hometown, by the way.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. I love it.
So it's great going back to
race. Love investing there. No, that's great. I mean, a bit of a long drive for me, but that's the one time I've chosen based on competitors, and I got a Q2. So it kind of that process definitely worked. To qualify previously, so for Romania, which was a wonderful experience too. Yeah. A bit different.
Yeah, fabulous place.
I loved it. Yeah. Everything closed so late. Everything opened so late. Everyone looking for food and everything was shut. But for that, it was a case of I'm going to pick where the times are the quickest on the runs, or so I thought, and based on that. Sadly, I picked the times that are quickest for I think the then national champion had done it. And I set some stupid course records, and I didn't realise he was the champ or anything. So, okay, rubbish. And I remember I was nearly lapped on the bike leg, and I was completely disheartened at that race. And managed to qualify. I think I got a roll down in 8th or something in the end. But so that kind of approach, don't advise it. Definitely advise to look at your competitors, but you don't know your competitors until you've raced them.
That's correct.
And that was always the challenge at the start. And so from that point, it was things got a bit easier because you get to know the people around you. You make some really lovely friends, don't you? And then you can bounce ideas off each other. Then you get in touch, and you're like, okay, you're going to race here. And actually, some people you think, oh, they're racing there. I'm not turning up.
Yeah, it's true. It is. It's very true.
There's definitely people I would avoid at all costs, particularly if you know kind of you've got to get within 15% or 20%.
Yeah.
And in your age group in a race, there was a race. It was Clumber Park a couple of years ago. Was it last year? So my now coach, Will Clark, actually rocked up to race in the duathlon there, which was also a qualifier. So at that time, I chose not to turn up because I would have been way out for a then professional triathlete. Yeah. And I think their time as the age group winner, although not obviously qualifying for the race, I think that time stands in terms of full qualification. Although I know BTF say that if there's someone pretty special in the race, they might review, but things like that do put you off going. Yeah, so you see it from that way too. So know your competition and work from there.
Wise words. But it is interesting the process that you can look at it from all different sort of points of view, can't you? I think you've just got to use your strengths, like you quite rightly have done, taking on duathlon rather than triathlon. I think that's the key to success, especially in age group. know your strengths, play to those strengths, and look at who else is around. And I can say it's done me well over the last few years. So long may it continue. You mentioned obviously you had your dad coaching you.
Yep.
You've been sort of like coached and not coached on and off throughout your sporting history. Yeah, is that correct?
Absolutely. So when I again, you're going back to mid-teens onwards, I used to jump in with different groups, either in the pool, on the track, or wherever, because my fellow competitors had asked me to come across and kind of help them out, join the group, to just add to the numbers, to hopefully assist kind of the number one, athlete or swimmer achieve their goals. So I've always had picked up all this information from all these different coaches, all these different methods, which have all formed part of my own thinking and how I used to deal with myself. So for those first 4 years, to get into the age group side, I coached myself using the methods and the techniques and the theories from all of those I'd come across. There's one coach in particular who was Jared's coach for a bit, the guy who used to run with kind of university days. A guy called Keith Holt, who does, I think is he currently running the England cross-country team or something. He might have dropped down to track for it. But that guy actually left a huge mark, because he introduced things like sports psychology. He worked you out very quickly mentally, and then how then to influence your training and achieve results. And it was under kind of involvement with him and Jared that I started seeing myself do things I never thought I'd do, fitness-wise, in various fitness testing that we did. So that always took us away. So the psychological approach became quite key. But there does come a point where a specialist was required. So after a few years of kind of self-coaching, again with influence from other places, I decided to join World Clark's stable, knowing that he had a group of amazing athletes, primarily focused on Ironman. But again, I think that's because that was my first real love within triathlon. Yeah. And I thought that approach was good. The discipline, the hours, the distance, and being surrounded by people far better than me. And to pick up ideas again, because you're always learning something in this game. Yeah. Bike tech is I don't know. I know what a disc wheel is, right? But we talk about the group checks and the nuances of that, and I kind of thought, let's join a specialist. And the results are really, are there clear to see again. And the power and stuff, and training by power rather than by perceived effort and heart rate and cadence. Fantastic. So it's adding to that knowledge you already had gleaned from the sport. And I think actually in multi-sport, all of us as athletes, we know a lot about how to train and what to do. And I think there's a load of people who are self-coached or just kind of joining the local clubs. But the amount of knowledge that we have picked up, I think if we put it all together, we could create a beast,
Yeah. I think even locally, you surround yourself by people who, all right, they're not names, they're not well-known coaches, but they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, And like you rightly said, we're like sponges, aren't we? We pick these up as we go along. But yeah, I mean, I've not been coached by a coach as such. There's a group of us who we get together and we have coaches who do a bit of running, but they're all part of the group. They're not anything. They've just gone off and done qualifications, and they're athletes themselves. So, and actually, one of the guys in the group, he has been coached, long distance coaching. So it interests me to see whether actually how much it would bring you on, if you do go down that route. And I'm sure the people that I've spoke to since doing this, I think you're probably the second one who's been coached. You do say that it has brought you up another level. So
it's literally 100 watts on the bike. This kind of last 3-4 months. Yeah, it's mad. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Yeah. But so there's definitely a benefit to it. I think if you, because some coaches are very expensive. Yeah. So you have to work out whether you're going to get bang for your buck. I think if you've reached a point where you feel you're plateauing, that's the time to go. I think if you still feel yourself improving on your own, I don't think you need to engage in that. But I think when you hit that, you think you've hit the ceiling. And maybe you start doubting yourself as well. Like, can I get quicker? Can I do that? If I don't get any quicker, I'm not going to qualify. Actually, at that point, a coach is really, really useful, because they're going to give you that belief. They're going to give you a hard word sometimes to get yourself going. But I think that's the point where...
No, that's wise words again. We'll get on to hints and tips. Anybody doing multi-sport at the moment that wants to go into try and qualify for age group, what hints and tips would you give them so they could sort of like reach that potential that you found from your own experience?
I think discipline is the biggest driver for you. If you wake up, it's dark, it's raining, it's freezing, and you just can't be bothered, overcome that. You've got to get out, because everyone who qualifies is doing that and has that discipline and drive. And I think even if you don't want to do it yourself, and I go back to my biggest driver is fear. That fear inside you is like, oh, someone else is doing it. Someone else who you might know your competition, and it's that guy that you're fighting with for that your last qualifying spot. They're doing it, and so that fear needs to get you out there. That fear needs to get you out there. So my biggest tip is discipline. Set yourself a plan and stick to it. There are times where I think if you look at Kenyan athletics. Sometimes they wake up and they feel rubbish, and it's knowing whether it's your body talking or it's your mind playing tricks on you. Because it's okay to have a few days off here and there, 100%, because you need to recover. But if it's your kind of our inbuilt laziness, and we can go into a debate about the brain, or the ego, super ego, and all that governs. But a part of your brain is lazy, and it wants you to chill, and it wants you to just relax. The problem with doing that, if you did listen to that part of the brain, is that probably about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to feel gutted that you didn't go out for that run. And then you've realised, I don't have time to do that now the rest of the day, because I've got a job, I've got a family, I've got responsibilities. So the discipline is the one thing you need to maintain.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, wise words. So we're looking at resources. What resources do you use within your multi-sport?
So one thing with multi-sport is, and I want everyone listening to do it, is look at the run, look at the swim, look at the cycling, all of them independently of one another, and learn the history of the sport, and learn what people have done. And it's not just for motivation and inspiration, but it's to understand how things have evolved over time. I'm really big into this. Look back here with cycling, look at Eddie Merckx and what he did. Look at Boardman's achievements and work out how did they train, how did they reach these heights, how did they play with science and look at, particularly the cycling thing, aerodynamics and positions. Let's see how they did it, because they're the specialists, and it's the specialists in each individual sport that we will gain most from as multi-sporters. I think it's all about understanding where you individually have come from in terms of those 3 specific events, and then merging them all together. Because when you merge them all together, you find that you kind of achieve things like you achieve a Brownliness in what you're doing. Because again, Alistair Brownlee, he's an inspiration, because he's always been amazing at all of the sports. And we don't have that inbuilt talent and potential, but we can learn about it and how others individually have thrived from going back in time. And another person that everyone must look at for inspiration again is there are two people that have come through the age group system who are of note. Chrissy Wellington, the greatest Ironman of all time. She is fantastic, a phenomenon. And look at her journey. She came through age group. And Reece Ashfield from today, last year he was age group, and this year he's a pro. Yeah,
I saw him at Punta Umbria.
Yeah, did you see him? Amazing.
I'd seen him at a couple, and I thought, I clocked his, because I never forget a face. Not very good with names, but I never forget a face. And I looked at him and I said to my wife, I said, he was in the age group as last year. And she said, oh yeah, he was. And so, yeah.
And it's those guys, you look at them and you think, okay, do you know what, it shows how strong, obviously, we are as a nation, in triathlon. But it shows the mobility too, which I think is incredible, and it shows the pathway is there for anyone who wants it and wants to push themselves to it.
Yeah. And
it is.
The final one from me. What's your favourite bit of kit?
It's got to be the sun-dried aero skin suit, which I compete in when not wearing the GB blue. Honestly, that is the most comfortable thing I've ever worn.
Right.
It's comfortable to the extent that there's been a couple of work days where I've had to go into offices and sit down in various corporate meetings. I've worn it underneath. It's amazing. It's really it's so soft. It's made from the finest Italian fabric. But honestly, the sun-dried aero skin suit is something that everyone must have.
And finally from me, what are your goals for the future?
I think COVID has done some horrible things to everyone's goals, and everyone, I think, has been a bit demoralised by the situation. Clearly, everyone's health is the most important thing, so we understand the measures that have to be taken, but this year is going to be a bit of a tough year in terms of competing performance. So I'm looking forward to the rearrangement of Almere next year in Holland. That's the big focus. Yeah. And you've been fortunate enough to keep our qualifying slots,
that's
which is really, really good of the federation to do. Right now, we feel grateful that Almere is back on the radar, and we thought we might have lost it. We thought we might be completely cancelled, and that was throwing a lot of things up in the air. So that's really sharpened, I think, everyone's focus in the long term. But then beyond that, who knows? Who knows? I mean, for me, I just want to step up. I want to get back on the Ironman circuit, 70.3 and full. Learning what I've learned from the first year. The first time you do it, the second time you do it, dropping out of it. When you go back, you're fresher, you're wiser. You've had the ability to compete with some amazing people, which is something that we can all learn from. Some of the athletes around us, unbelievable. And so it's amazing to have access to all those people. And then I get to mention, Maurice Young as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, we lost him this week.
Yeah.
I know you spoke to him a lot more than I did. I spoke to him once, but just calm.
Yeah.
Calm, and really helped. Because it's my first time in Romania, and just the calming words, amazing.
Yeah, fantastic.
Amazing. So
fantastic guy.
Mm.
Sadly missed.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's great. Thank you ever so much for coming on and sharing your time. Much appreciated.
No, it's great. You've given the platform to just people like ourselves who wouldn't otherwise get to talk about it. And we talk about it to people that are interested.
Absolutely, and it's like I said,
which is great.
Yeah. That was my idea. So hopefully, people appreciate it. Thank you ever so much again. And
lovely stuff.
All right, cheers, Matt.
Cheers, Rich.
Take care.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Great to hear from Matt and his achievement after his 5-year plan. Loved his strategy on starting with Ironman, using it as a base to build his strength, dropping down to his optimal race. That's really interesting. So that's episode 5 done. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, leave us a comment, rate it, and let all your friends know about it. Spread the word. We had a question come in this week from Dan MC Lifestyle on Instagram, and he asked, how often should you change your saddle? Well, it's not something I've really thought about very much, so that would tell you that I haven't ever changed my saddle from setup. But I guess it depends on usage, wear and tear, if you've had a crash or just have had a lot of use on your bike. Some manufacturers recommend 2 years, but I've seen that professionals use theirs for up to 6,000 kilometres, and saddles are usually good for 10 years. But again, each individual case is different. But it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on this or on any other matter. If you've got any questions, drop us an email, message us on Instagram and Facebook. And one last thing, I'd just like to say a big thank you for all the support that we've had so far on this podcast, especially from Age Group News on Instagram. And if you don't follow them, give them a look up for all things age group. Some really good articles on there and some great photographs. So that's it for episode 5. Thanks again. And remember, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.